Cool, let's get into it. Today we're joined by Jia Yu, who is going to be showcasing how LottieFiles have used Framer to build their business site, and Paul Lapkin, who is going to be showing the amazing LearnType site for Blaze Foundry. I'll pass it over to them now for some quick introductions. Jia Yu, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jia Yu. I'm a product designer on the web team at LottieFiles, and I've been here for about 2.5 years.
Amazing. That's cool. Thanks, Jia. Paul, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, my name is Paul Lapkin. I'm a freelance digital designer based here in Toronto, Canada. I've been designing for around 10 years now, and I've been using Framer mostly for the last year and a half, creating websites for like startups and creatives to kind of give them a competitive advantage online.
Sweet. Thanks, Paul. All right, let's jump right into it. We're going to start with GU's showcase of LottieFiles. As I mentioned, please be sure to ask any questions that you've got in the chat, and I'll pass them over once the presentation is finished. Take it away, GU.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I'm on the web team at LottieFiles, so I work on the website with a couple other designers and a bunch of developers, and we started using Framer about sometime last year. I don't remember exactly when, and it's been super, super useful. So before I get into that and how we use Lottie here at LottieFiles, I'll just give you a brief overview of Lottie for those of you who don't know it. So just to summarize, a Lottie is a JSON-based animation file format that lets you ship vector-based animations on multiple platforms like web, iOS, and Android. And because it's vector-based, you can scale it up or down, and it never loses quality. And it has a small file size compared to other video or animation formats like GIF or MP4. And you can program it to be interactive. For example, play on hover, play on click, syncing a Lottie animation to your scrolling or with your cursor position, and so on. So that's what a Lottie is, and LottieFiles is a platform for discovering, testing, collaborating, and using Lottie animations. So we have an extensive library of animations that are completely free to use, and a collection of tools and integrations that support using Lottie in all of your favorite tools. So just an example here. So we have a plugin for Figma, for After Effects, and for some popular animation tools and online platforms, you won't need any plugins because they already support Lottie natively. For example, Webflow, Canva, Medium, and of course, Framer. So during the time that I've been here, the website has changed quite a bit. We went through like a rebranding, a revamp of the website, creation of a design system, and a revamp of the design system. And one of the most impactful changes that we did was when we started using Framer. So why did we start using Framer? So before, let me just change over to this. Yeah, so before, this was what the process of getting a web page from design to implementation was like. So the designers would design on Figma, we'd hand it off to the developers build it, they push it to staging, and then the designers review and do QA on staging. And this is what tends to take a lot of time. There could be multiple rounds of reviews or QAs. Sometimes the design doesn't turn out how we think, how we expected it to, or there's some like unexpected issues during QA or when the design is implemented. So this is where it takes a lot of time and is like a huge headache. And after all that's done, everything's fixed and everything's good to go, then we give the developers the okay and they push it to production. So any edits to after pushing to production, whether it was major or minor, required a developer. So the turnaround time was could be kind of long as there were more dependencies. And one day our co-founder, Natu, came to the design team and said, hey, there's this cool tool called Framer, and it lets designers build and publish pages without code. So why don't you guys try it out? So our goal was to try to streamline this whole process that I just went over, and not to mention make it quicker to make any design edits or copy edits. And Framer has been super helpful on that. So now our process after using Framer and implementing it into our workflow is like this. We design on Figma. And sometimes we can skip this step if the page that we need is based on a template that we already have on Framer. So we could even skip designing on Figma. We build on Framer. We can push it to staging and review it ourselves. There's not this like back and forth between the designer and developer. And then we can push it to production. So the reason this is possible is because our developers have laid the foundation and set things up so that we can push pages to production ourselves via Strapi, which is the CMS that we use. So we can essentially design and publish and do any edits with minimal involvement from the devs. So the turnaround time is way quicker than before. So here at LottieFiles, we usually use Framer for landing pages, as in the designers use Framer for landing pages, and the developers focus on pages that require functionality. So not every page on our website is built on Framer. Yeah, and in the past several months, we've been focusing on localization a lot, and Framer has also been really useful in our localization efforts. So we've translated most of our highest priority landing pages into different languages like Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, and Korean. And of course, it's also in English. And yeah, so let me show you how we do this. So first we have the page. We have it designed on Framer. So we use the CMS for this and for all our localization. So this is the English version. And we have versions for Spanish and Portuguese here. So let me just show you what the CMS is like. So what is good about the CMS is we can just build a landing page one time, and any copy that we need to be different, so basically all the text on here, because they all have to be in different languages, we put them into the CMS so that like the English version would pull from like the English CMS collection, and Portuguese would pull from Portuguese, but everything would be the same basically. So you don't have to like duplicate any work. And yeah, so the point of doing this is we want to translate our most popular landing pages, like mainly informational pages, so that we, like people from other countries and who are used to different languages, can learn more about Lottie, and we can serve the right version of a page to the appropriate audience. And because there are so many fields, let me just show you our CMS actually. So there's a ton of fields because there's so much content on this page. So how we actually manage it is we use a Google Sheet like this. So when we get a new translation, we add it to this Google Sheet, and we use this Google Sheet as the source of truth. And we just have to make sure that all the titles are the same, like all the fields are the same, and the content is in the right place. And then you copy this, we copy this whole section here. And maybe I'll just show you. See, copy, I'll make a new sheet. And then you paste it, paste transposed. And then you'll do, let's say like I just got this new French translation. So I'd do it like this. Yeah, so you make sure that the fields are all correct, and then you can download this as a CSV file. So then on Framer, on the CMS, instead of creating a new item and having to fill out these fields one by one, which would take so long, you can just import it and upload your CSV file. Yeah, so that's how we use Framer CMS for our localization. And this isn't the only page. We have like a ton of pages that we've translated. So we use the CMS a lot. And another thing that Framer has requested me to share about is how we integrate Framer pages with our own site's navigation and footers. So let me use this page as an example. Yeah. So when you go on the LottieFiles site, you'll see that we have the navigation and the footer the same on every single page, even though not every page is from Framer. Some pages, actually many pages, especially the more functional pages or tool pages, they're built on our own code base. But yeah, we need the navigation and the footer on every single page. So apparently the Framer team has received questions from other people or even other companies who are really curious how we do this. So let me just show you. So what our developers do is that they scrape the code from a Framer page. So let's say it's this page here. So this is the Framer page. See, it doesn't have the navigation or anything because we didn't build it in Framer. We didn't build the navigation into Framer. So they would scrape the, let me just change that. Yeah, they would scrape the code from here, and then they'd put that code into a container and insert it into the body section of the HTML. So let me show you. Okay. So if you look over, if I go and hover over here, so this is from our own code base, but all the content between the navigation and footer is from a Framer page. So it's like a sandwich. So once I go here, you can see on if you look on the right side, you'll see div class Framer, right? So this is what I mean by when I say that they scrape the code and they put it into a container. So yeah, and they put it in the body section of the HTML. So it's actually pretty simple to do. And for some pages like this, the entire body is all Framer content. But on other pages, we kind of mix the content. For example, on our home page. So on this page, this isn't from Framer, this is from our code base. And the content here is from Framer. So to do that, you'd basically do the same thing, except you'd have your own code above and below the Framer content. So see, this isn't Framer content. This isn't Framer content. But everything starting from here, you see that same container for the Framer page. Yeah, so integrating Framer pages with your own site's navigation and footers and even page content is actually quite simple. So yeah, and with Framer, we can also make multiple variations of the same landing page for A/B testing. So at LottieFiles, we use Growthbook for A/B testing. And just to be clear, you don't need Growthbook. I mean, you don't need Framer to do A/B testing on Growthbook. But how it's helpful for us is that it makes it easy for the designers to create or edit those different variations that we want to test. So for example, if you look at this homepage, how we might do A/B testing here is we might want to test different variations of the copy on this button. So I'm logged in right now, so it says go to my dashboard, but if I was logged out, it would say something different. So we might want to test different variations of, you know, if it's getting started, if it's sign up now, register now. and see which leads to more conversions. So to make those variations, we would duplicate the original page on Framer and then put those two variants of the same Framer page on Growthbook and monitor the performance. So I'll just show you a little example of what that is like. So this is just an example. It's not like it's just placeholder information. So this isn't real data. So what's happening here is traffic is being split 50-50 for a pricing page for users who have Korean, or KR, as their preferred language. And what you see here, pricing page 1 KR and pricing page 2 KR, these would be the two variations of the Framer page that we would want to test. And if one performs better, then we roll it out to 100% of the audience and we keep that version of the Framer page. Yeah. So the last thing that I'll share about is how we use code overrides on Framer on our website. So even though Framer is a no-code tool, sometimes we make use of its code override section. And one main way that we use it is to keep some information that we display across our website consistent. So for example, it's here. Yeah, so if you see this bit, trusted by 5.5 million designers and developers from over 250,000 companies worldwide, this section we repeat across multiple pages on our website. And because we need to update these numbers every so often, it's pretty hard to keep track of every single instance where we use these numbers and have to update them one by one. So what we do is, so this is a screenshot of what this page looks like on Framer. So we've added a code override on Framer. The file's called Strappy Numbers. And what it does is it replaces the numbers for the, you know, however many million designers and however many companies, and calls it from where we store those numbers on Strappy. So you'll see here on the actual design, I didn't put like the number, but instead we put like a bracket users and bracket companies. So when you go into the code, this is what it looks like. And yeah. So here you can see this code override is calling the data from Strappy. And here you'll see what on the code it says replace bracket users with the user count, which is from Strappy, and replace bracket companies with the company count, and that's from Strappy. So how this is really helpful is that when we need to update these numbers, there's only one place we have to update them, which is on Strappy, which again is the CMS that we use. So we update the number for the companies and for the designers and developers once on Strappy. And if we have this code override added to a Framer page or Framer project, the new number should reflect immediately. So we don't have to go to every single page and manually update the numbers. So yeah, that's how helpful Framer has been at LottieFiles. It's really changed the way that we work and helped us to be more efficient, and also given designers a little bit more power, I guess. Not power, but yeah, just like power, like autonomy, I guess, because we can design, we can build the page according to our design without having to depend too much on the developer, and any updates that we get to the content or from marketing, it's really easy for us to update it ourselves on Framer.
Amazing. Super cool to see how you're using Framer at LottieFiles. We have a couple questions in the chat, Jia Yu, for you. First one is why did you pick the CMS for localization, not something like Weglot?
I think it's because we already used to using Framer, so using the CMS just seemed kind of easier. We haven't really explored much using Weglot. We get our translations from Gango, and also there's an agency that we work with to get translations. But
Cool.
yeah, since we were already using Framer, trying out their CMS for localization seemed like a good next step.
Yeah, totally. That makes a ton of sense. Thank you for answering. And I think you actually answered a bit of the next question, which is how do you actually do the translations? Do you do it manually? I think you mentioned that you use an agency. Is that right?
Yeah, so we use this thing called Gango. So how that works is I think it works better for short translation. So if you have like a whole page, it might not be the best. So we get translations from Gango and then we run it by the agency or get someone to proofread them. So for some languages, we have people in our company who are fluent in them and they'll help do the proofreading. And for others, we don't really have anyone in the company who can speak that language. So we go with the agency and they proofread and make sure everything sounds cohesive in the language page. Yeah,
Sweet.
and then we put that into the Google Sheet and then into Framer.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. One more question we had from Habib, who is a huge fan of LottieFiles. And this is not specific to LottieFiles, but I'm curious of your take on it. He said, I see often that teams prefer to design in Figma and then build in Framer. What do you think is still missing in Framer so that you could feel comfortable to design directly in Framer itself?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think Framer is great for building, but somehow doing those quick iterations when you're first starting with a design still feels easier on Figma because, on Figma, you don't have to worry about the, responsiveness, anything like that. It just feels easier to like do those like quick sketches. And then once you have a final design, then you put it into Framer and then you can start getting more into like the little details of like how, like what's the responsive behavior for this section. Yeah, so maybe part of it is like just habit. And also all of our Figma files are on, they're on Figma. So everything that we've had designed in the past few years, they're all on Figma. And not every single page that we have is on Framer. So that's why we still prefer to use Figma. I think they're both really good tools, but they serve different purposes.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you. I'm always interested to hear other people's take on that question. Thanks for asking it, Habib. Does anyone else have any questions for Jia Yu just while we have her? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Sweet. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much again, Jia Yu. That was really, really cool to hear. I think it's great to hear from the bigger businesses who are building their sites on Framer around how they're approaching different solutions. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome anytime. We will move over to Paul next. Paul is going to speak about the Learn Type site that he built for Blaze Foundry. So Paul, we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kate. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks again to Jia Yu for that amazing presentation. That was really cool seeing how everything was built on LottieFiles. So today I will be walking you through how I designed and built the Learn Type website for Blaze Type. I have the book here, if anybody has seen it. Really cool, a lot of great information in here, how to create your own typeface. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to give you a little background on Blaze Type. So bear with me here, I'm just gonna share my screen. We're going to go into Inception mode. Alrighty, so Blaze Type is an independent type foundry based in France. Really cool. They create like a lot of like bespoke and like contemporary typefaces. They're all very unique. So for example, this serif typeface here is called APOC, and each kind of like each end has like a little spur. It's very unique, kind of has like a little darker edge to it. And a lot of these typefaces are made with an emphasis on variable typefaces, which is not available in Framer right now, but will be at some time in the future. And variable typefaces are really cool because if you've used Figma, you can see that they kind of like, you don't have like one static like font width, like regular, medium, or bold. You can kind of like make it very precise, and you can scale from any size from like 0 to 100. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff with that. We could probably do a whole presentation on variable typefaces themselves. But for this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the Learn Type website. So Matthew, the founder of Blaze Type, came to me because he was designing a book on how to create your own typeface. So he really wanted to make kind of like a cool, like experimental landing page to kind of like showcase the book and generate sales and create a lot of buzz for like his new product. So I'll just kind of like run through this website here and walk you through it. And then we'll kind of like go into the Framer file, and I'll show you how I built a lot of these cool features. So this website, I'll refresh so you can see the loading animations. This website is built on custom typefaces. So we're not using any of the kind of like regular Google fonts or font share fonts. So no enter on this website. We're mainly using rules, which is like kind of like the bold serif typeface here, and nuances. So these are two custom typefaces by Blaze Type. And these are also the fonts that Matthew is using in the book. So we wanted to keep everything kind of like really simple and minimalistic, and also create kind of like a cohesive experience across like the digital website and the printed book itself. Scrolling down here, these motion graphics are created by awesome motion designer, Alan. I can share his Twitter link later. This website was kind of like a cool collaboration between me, Blaze Type, and Alan. So to kind of like bring everything together. Going down, we'll just kind of like scroll through the website quickly. There's a lot of like immersive kind of like scrolling animations. We really wanted to create like a cool minimal experience to just kind of like, you know, demonstrate what was possible in Framer. So we're using a lot of like scroll transformations, tickers, different scrolling effects that you'll see as we go through the page. One really cool thing coming up here is we have like a horizontal scroll effect. A lot of people ask me how this is done. So this effect is not necessarily native in Framer, but with a quick little hack, it is very possible. So I'll run you through that when we go through the Framer file. Going down is just kind of like more about the book, learn how to design professional fonts. You know, this guide is created for anyone interested in type design or font production. There's a lot of really cool stuff inside this book. So basically, the book is designed to teach you how to think, sketch, design, and create your own typeface. There's a lot of really cool information inside of there. Here's just kind of like some promotional images from the actual book itself. So these graphics were created by Matthew, the founder of Blaze Type. And these are just kind of like a little sample of what you might find in the book. You know, how to create your own sans serif typeface. You know, how to work on the letter S. You know, drawing good paths. How to sketch different letters in the Glyphs app. You know, kind of like an overview of different capital letters, and creating your own variable typeface. So again, all this information is available inside the book. And down here is just kind of like a little like e-commerce section where you can actually purchase the book. So when we created this website, one of the big challenges was that e-commerce was not directly supported out of the box in Framer. And we wanted to make it easy for customers to be able to buy the digital PDF, which is only 17 euros. So in order to do that, I kind of like hacked together a little Lemon Squeezy checkout page. So we use Lemon Squeezy because it has kind of like low fees. There's like a direct checkout page. And if anyone should use Gumroad, Lemon Squeezy is kind of like their competitor. And a lot of designers are using it now on Twitter. And I'll walk you through how I created this later. But essentially, this is a kind of like overlay nested inside the website, styled to look the same as the website. So it feels like one whole experience, and you don't leave the website. So it kind of like keeps you on the website and makes it very easy to purchase the book and check out. And again, we also have the book/PDF combo. And this one is available on Lulu, which is a separate website. You can kind of like buy like a printed, published version of the book that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. And down here, we just have like a little table of contents that just kind of like, you know, displays everything that is inside the book. This is one kind of like big accordion component. Each one of these kind of like nested sections is linked. So you click one and then it switches to a different component and shows you the content inside the other box. And down here, we just have like a little simple footer. Just kind of like shows the payment methods, how to contact Blaze Type, a little colophone saying that, you know, the website was made in Framer, designed by me, and that's pretty much it. So from here, I will dive into the actual Framer file itself. All right. So, one of the cool things I forgot to show you as we're going through the website is that this is actually built on themes. So there's, oh shoot, my sharing screen button's getting in the way here. There we go. Yeah, so this website is actually themed to have native, light mode, and dark mode. So depending on your kind of like OS settings, the website will automatically switch from light to dark. So in the light version, we have like a white background with red text, and the dark version, we have a black background with white text. I did try the red version. It did look a little bit devilish, so we opted to just use white text instead. But that is another topic. We'll just be kind of like jumping into how this file was actually made. So this whole website is built on a 12-column grid system. So everything's kind of like influenced by like the Swiss typographic style, the Swiss design style, if you're familiar with that. So big emphasis on like kind of like white space, typography, you know, alignment, grid systems. So the kind of like 12-column grid system is a foundation of this website. And if you're using a Mac computer, you can access the grid lines by pressing Control+G. Kind of like make it appear and go away. And I'll show you this as we go through the page more. So one of the big sections I wanted to show everybody was how we created this kind of like horizontal scroll effect that you see halfway through the page. So again, I'll just show you it here. Yeah, once we get to this part here, learning type design has never been so easy. So this is a really cool effect that you can add to your website to create like a cool horizontal scrolling experience. And so it'll kind of like start scrolling sideways, and then once you reach the end, it'll start scrolling vertical. So in order to do this, I kind of created a nested frame here called gallery. And there's a lot of images in here. I have 4 images, and as you can see, they kind of like extend. It's about 200% width of the canvas. And how this works is that I applied a scroll transform to these images. And there's a scroll trigger in place. So once you reach a certain section on the page, you know, the transform will take place. And what's actually happening here is that when you reach this section of this page, I am doing an offset. So I measured the size of all these images, and the width altogether was 2,400 pixels. So when we get to this section, we do an offset of minus 2,400. So I'll just adjust this number here. So you can see, you know, minus 1,200, you know, we're not particularly at the end of the section yet. And as I kind of increase that number, you'll see it kind of like moves further to the side. And once we get to 2,400, content is completely out of view, And that's kind of like the end of the animation you see when you're scrolling through the page. In order for this effect to fully work, I created another section directly below it. So this invisible white box. And what this has is a scroll section, and I called it scroll trigger. It's again right here. Let's go and create it again, scroll section. And it's called scroll trigger. So what happens is this element here, the actual image gallery, is set to position sticky. So what happens is when you get to this kind of like section of the page, the gallery block kind of like sticks to the top of the page and it stays in place. And I set the viewport height to 100. And what that does is make sure it just kind of like takes up the whole vertical space of the screen. And then what you can't see is that the other section is still behind it. So the scroll trigger, this section also has a 100 viewport height. And these are both nested inside a stack. So in order to have like sticky sections, you need to kind of create a stack in Framer, and you need to set the overflow to visible. So this allows you to kind of like do that sticky effect. And I isolated them inside this one section called horizontal scroll to ensure that the gallery does not stick on top of all the other content on the website. Because if it wasn't inside the horizontal scroll stack, everything would kind of like scroll underneath it, which would make the effect not work. So I can dive into this more later on if people want to ask me more questions. It's kind of a little complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. One of the other things people ask me about this website is the actual typefaces themselves. So these are all kind of like custom web fonts that I uploaded to Framer. So if you're not familiar with that, you just click on any type layer. So I'll detach this for now. Yeah, so this is kind of like the native font picker that people are used to seeing in Framer. You can pick all the web fonts from Google or FontShare, and I am using custom typefaces. So the fonts I'm using are Nuances Condensed and Rules. Rules is kind of like more like a Helvetica looking typeface, kind of like a Swiss grotesque font. And Nuances is more of kind of like a display serif typeface. So lots of like kind of like individual quirks in this font. For example, like the O is kind of like back slanted and you have like these really big spurs on top of the letters. And it's kind of like all these unique little qualities. So in order to do that, you just select your font and you go to the custom tab and you click on the upload button here to add a new typeface. So I will go to Blaze type here, go into, just kind of like show you how this is done. Yeah, you just kind of like grab your font. Framer uses WAF2 files for the web because they're like, the file size is really small, they load really quick, and they're compressed for the web. So these are the typefaces I'm using. So you just pick the one you want, and then you upload it, and then it automatically appears in your custom font library. So that's really cool. One of the other things I'm doing on this website is we kind of have like a lot of like appear animations for the kind of like headings when you scroll through each section. I'll demonstrate again here. So as you kind of scroll through each section, the titles will like slide up from the bottom, as well as some of these images here. In order to do that, you can either use the, I believe there's a kind of like a magic text plugin that Benjamin created on the kind of like Framer component website. But these are actually all done with appear animations because I wanted to kind of like stagger and offset them. So what I did was I kind of have like a stack here that I created for the title section. And because I'm using kind of like a mix match of like serif typefaces and sans serif typefaces, I kind of had to like offset them a little bit to make sure the baseline was lined up. So if you're not familiar, the baseline is just kind of like the invisible line at the bottom that just makes sure these two fonts line up. So I will adjust the padding here. So you see they're kind of like, they're not lined up. So on the serif fonts, I set the bottom padding to 8 just to make sure that they lined up perfectly at the bottom here. And inside each one of these kind of like stacks for line 1, line 2, and line 3, I created a appear animation So an appear animation is basically the animation that takes place when the page loads. And what I did was I went in here and I set a offset of 160. So that's kind of like the vertical height of the font. And that ensures that when the page loads, the typeface is out of view. Again, set it back to 160. And I applied a spring animation to kind of like make it, give it like that smooth reveal effect. And each one of these words has a different delay property. So it starts with the Blaze type guide, 0 seconds, learn is 0.15 seconds, and there's kind of like a 0.15 second delay between each one. So once you add all those up, we get to about 0.75 seconds. And when I load the page, you'll see there's kind of like a little stagger between each of the words loading in. And this is a really cool effect. I use this on a lot of my websites. For example, the Sebastian Camargo website, or my own personal website that I'm working on right now, and the Blaze type website. I think it's just kind of like a really cool minimal effect that adds kind of like an extra layer of polish to the website and makes it feel a bit more immersive as you're going through the page. And in order to make this possible, you just need to make sure that the stack or the frame that the letters are contained inside has the overflow set to hidden. That way, when kind of like the words are out of view, they're hidden and they're kind of cropped off, and then it kind of creates that cool effect as they come into the canvas. And I applied this again on the other headlines throughout the page, except with these ones, because I wanted the effect to appear each time you scroll past the letters. So not just on load, but every time you scroll past the headlines. So let's kind of go back and forth here. I applied a scroll transform to these instead. So a scroll transform is kind of like the appear animations, except with these effects, they kind of like appear on loop. So every time you kind of like go past the section on the page, the scroll transform will repeat again. And I'm not sure how much time I have left. Kate, do I have time to share one more thing?
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
Okay, cool. Let's do it. All right, so the other thing is the Lemon Squeezy overlay. So we went with an overlay just to kind of like create like a whole kind of like cohesive experience on the website, so that when you go to buy the digital PDF of the book, you know, you don't go to like another checkout page, you don't leave the website. You know, stats show when you stay on the website, the customer is more likely to purchase the product. And this is essentially a component nested inside a button. So in Framer, you can add overlays to any layer. So in this case, when you tap the Buy Now button, it triggers a overlay. And inside this overlay is a component. Let's scroll back to the top here. For the Lemon Squeezy checkout page. And this component has two variants. So there is a loading variant that has like the ... animation. And then after a certain number of seconds, it switches to the checkout page, which you can see. Let's hit the play button here. It's not loading. Let's try that again on the home page. I'll click this button and I'll scroll to the book. Must be an error right now. Essentially, what you can do is you can tie an overlay to any object. So I can kind of create a new one from scratch here, just to show everybody how it's done. Alrighty, so I am going to add a new button here and do it from scratch. So I created a whole kind of like assets panel here for each item on the website. It's very organized. I have it organized by accordion, buttons, images, overlays, sections. And here I want the large overlay button. So here I'm going to change this to buy the book. And then I'm going to add a trigger effect. So when I tap button, it opens an overlay. And you can see that in the layer menu here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the overlay component that I created to buy the PDF onto the canvas. And I'm going to cut and paste this inside the button layer. Just click on this here, desktop, main. Oh, seem to be having some issues here. I want you to click that. Desktop, main, get the book. Perfect, yeah. So I click the overlay layer and I'm going to paste the component inside of this. And I'm going to set the position, top, left, right, bottom, 0. Position absolute, just to make sure this takes up the whole viewport. And I'm going to set the preset to instant. That way it appears instantly. And I'm going to set the Z index to 10. That way the overlay appears above everything else. So now we can see the kind of like loading dot animation here, the close button in the corner. And then now when I click on this button, let's load this up. Overlay should open. Perfect. I'm not sure why the checkout content isn't loading. Let's go back and investigate. Oh, the other one's working. Yeah, let's go look at that one. We also have another overlay that I created to buy the book on Lulu. So that's the actual physical copy of the book. And the same kind of like tutorial applies. You create a button with a component that you kind of like copy and paste inside the overlay. And then when you click it, oh, this one goes to the actual website. Let's change this one to the, I'm sorry guys, I'm having some issues with this today. My layer screen is not working the way I want it to. There we go. So when you create an overlay, it even if your page is really long, it always appears at the top of the page. So you just kind of have to remember that. You always have to scroll back to the top. Just for the sake of time here, because my other one's not working, I'm going to swap this component with the component for the physical book. So I'm going to replace with project overlay by book. There we go. And then I also have a tap trigger inside the component itself, just to ensure when you click the close button, it closes the overlay. So I'm just going to add that right here and go hit done. So let's go back here. This should work now. Perfect. Yeah, so this is the actual Lulu website where users can buy like the paperback version of the book. And then when you purchase this, you also get a copy of the digital PDF. That's kind of like how we created the overlay experience to buy the book. And I think that's all for today. That's all the time I have. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And it was a lot of fun sharing this project with you. This was a really cool project. We won the Framer Site of the Month, and we also won the CSS Design Award for Website of the Day. So yeah, it was a really enjoyable experience working on this project, and it was also featured on the brand identity. So it just goes to show you can, if you create really cool things with Framer and you share it on the internet, like Twitter or anywhere else you're kind of like posting things like Instagram, you know, you can get lots of really cool press for it. And people who say you can't win awards for Framer websites is wrong, because, you know, I've just clearly showed that it is possible. And I encourage you to make really cool things and share it online, and, you know, just share your work with the world and create really cool stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. I love seeing that site. That's honestly one of my favorite sites that I've seen built in Framer. When I joined a couple of months ago, that's the first one that I looked at that was like, whoa, look what this is actually like capable. It's so sick. We are a bit short on time, but there are a couple of questions that I just want to run by you. One is from Raz, and it is, when breaking up the hero title, like learn and how to, into separate frames, does that affect SEO, do you know, or even accessibility or how web crawlers read it?
Yeah, it can affect your Lighthouse score, not by much. I optimized the website pretty to get as close to 100 as possible, but Google will penalize you, like if the font, like the title isn't instantly legible, like when the page loads. So yeah, it does ding your SEO score, but not by very much. It's only like a few points, very marginal in my opinion. And for like that extra layer of polish, you know, like kind of like that first impression you leave on the user when they first join or visit your page, I think it's worth it, because like first impressions are everything these days, and a lot of people just kind of like judge you based on the first thing you see. So we felt it was important to kind of like add that extra layer of polish to leave like a really good lasting impression.
100%. Cool. Thanks for answering, Paul. And we had just one more from Dickie. I'm not sure if you have insight into this on your end or not, but he's wondering what effect like the individuality that the custom fonts bring to the site have on website conversion, if any. So like, what is your opinion or what's your knowledge on kind of having those more interactive experiences versus going for something a little bit more straightforward? What's the effect on the conversion rates of the site?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how much like the custom fonts themselves impact the conversion rate of the website, but I do know, for example, like if you look at a lot of the websites shared online these days, a lot of them are using like Inter or you know, kind of like any of the other popular Google typefaces. And what I don't like about that is you start to notice that like the web all starts to look very similar and it looks the same, and it's kind of like you lose that kind of like unique personality. So if you're trying to create something bold or unique or different or distinctive, or kind of like create like a memorable experience, I would encourage you to try using a you know, custom web typeface. There's lots of good type foundries I could recommend. Pangram from Montreal, Blaze Type from France. There's also Grilly Type, ABC Dynamo. There's so many. If you want any recommendations, you can just DM me on Twitter at Design by Paul, and I'll shoot some examples for you. But yeah, I'm not sure how much the web fonts themselves affect the conversion rate. But in our experience, like we sold over 1,000 copies of the book in the first month. And I think that's because we kind of like created like a unique, memorable website. And we also made it really easy for customers to like buy the book without leaving the website with the kind of like Lemon Squeezy overlay. And we had to do that because at the time, like e-commerce wasn't directly supported in Framer. And we just kind of like had to hack that together to make it easier for people to buy the book.
Totally. Sweet. Thank you so much for answering, Paul. And I think that wraps us up today for our show and tell. This was a really, really fun one. Thank you so much to both of our co-hosts, Jia Yu and Paul, for joining and showing us the amazing work that you're doing in Framer. As I mentioned at the start of the call, this recording will be posted to the community right after it's finished processing. It usually only takes a couple minutes. But yeah, I hope you all had a great time here at Show and Tell. I know I did. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, whether it be your morning, your afternoon, or your evening, or even your nighttime for a few folks on here. I really appreciate everyone joining, and I will see you all online. Thank you so much.